Galaxy S8 rumors are sprouting up like, well, sprouts. We'll try to collect the newest leaks for you and take a look at what Samsung might have up their sleeve. Apple might be stepping up its AI game soon, while Facebook gains a new VP for VR. And no, unequivocally, there will not be an HTC Smartwatch. At least, not anytime soon. Well, these stories, and we'll answer your viewer questions, so make sure you're charged and ready for episode 237 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Well, this weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile. Smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wished existed when you were a kid, and artificial intelligence was almost always used as a bad Frankenstein ripoff storyline in science fiction. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, blasting this signal from a cool, crisp evening in Southern California. Joined, as always, by plucky podcast producer, Mr. Jules Wong. How's it going, buddy boy?
But you need the artificial intelligence to juice up the Terminator in order for him to access the Matrix. And that will lead to a situation where Wall Street 2 sleeps, and that seemingly connects us to the Declaration
True story.
Of Independence.
Actually, Jules, I mean, like, the funny thing was, so years and years and years ago, I used to produce a movie review podcast, and we put together this amazing list of movies, and I wish I could just remember all of them, but it was something like 7 or 8 films that sort of detailed the rise and fall of AI subjugating humanity. And so we had like Terminator in there, and then that of course like leads into the Matrix, and then like, you know, some other like really high concept science fiction pieces. But it all started off with this old 60s film called Colossus. And if anyone out there hasn't seen, I think it's Colossus the Forbin Project. Maybe you might be getting that movie title wrong. But it's a phenomenal old 60s paranoia film about the United States building a supercomputer and then giving it access to all of our nuclear arsenal. And then the Soviet Union also building a supercomputer. And then those two supercomputers decide, why should we blow each other up? We should just control humanity and stop them from killing everybody. And it's actually a really well done thought piece. It's like hard science fiction at its best. So I would highly recommend that.
You know what this conversation has made me think about? Naming like a phone, like an artificial intelligence focused phone, Asimov.
Yeah. Because again, I mean, Asimov was all about not letting the Frankenstein complex take over his stories. That's why we have the 3 laws of robotics.
Yeah. Exactly. You know, you just have to. This is in a gold jungle out there, and yeah, I have nothing else to say to that because
no, I totally agree. And actually, I sort of grew up on Asimov's robot stories. I love the short stories because they're like little logic puzzles. It's like if you grew up reading Encyclopedia Brown and then you sort of transitioned into Isaac Asimov. He writes terrible characters. Like his humans don't really resemble people as they would exist in real life.
And that's why they've all been turned into cyborgs. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. No, exactly. No, I absolutely adore. I mean, like I'm such an Asimov nerd that if you were to just name any phone the Asimov, I'd buy it because I'd have to. It's like all of my stupid Star Trek tchotchkes. Like, well, I don't need this, but I need it, so I'm gonna get it.
You're probably going to need that, and you're probably going to need a whole bunch of food to keep you fueled while you're on the search for that AI phone. So why don't you tell us about our sponsor for this week?
That's a very good point. We should definitely be stocking up on things like food for the oncoming robot apocalypse. Unfortunately, I don't think Blue Apron would be a good fit for that because Blue Apron specializes in fresh ingredients, locally sourced. I've been using the service for a couple weeks now as part of our sponsorship deal. They were kind enough to send over a couple free meals for my wife and I to try out. And it is actually really cool to see like all of the produce and the meat labeling on the packaging. And also they do not mess around with this packaging. The packaging is like these 2 amazing like ice bricks in this like temperature controlled bag. It's shipped directly to you, and nothing is more than like a day or two old from being picked or processed or something as it arrives.
And then there's like a whole hydroponic garden inside, and then there are little
it's not
robots
too
that
far off.
control the climate.
Oh, it is actually,
it's like the 3 rules of gardening, of artificial gardening.
I mean, because I've even had like, there have been a few times after Lex was born where I was sick and Marie wasn't able to navigate stairs, where we had someone do like a local grocery store run for us, and the food that arrived from someone basically like being an Uber for a grocery store run came in worse shape than what Blue Apron is able to deliver to our doorstep in a giant box. So actually, no, that is actually really exciting to play with, especially because I'm sort of an amateur wannabe foodie. We get great recipe cards for all of the meals that we've been preparing. I know I mentioned this the last time that they were a sponsor about 2 weeks ago, but the spaghetti squash with mushrooms and garlic knots was phenomenal. Spicy shrimp with Korean rice cakes. And then we also did just like a very simple sort of a lightly fried chicken with mashed red potatoes with just like a little bit of wine kind of mixed in. It was this really, really well put together meal. And one of the things that's great about the service is they really do provide you exactly the material that goes into each meal. So there's virtually no food waste. I mean, it's only like if you don't like something, maybe you leave something on your plate, and shame on you. You should always finish your vegetables. No, I mean, like when they say it's like, oh, you need 3 scallions for this recipe, there are the 3 scallions in this box. It's not like when you go shopping for yourself and you're like, I need 2 red potatoes, but I can only buy a quantity of 12 from Trader Joe's. They really do an amazing job of curtailing that and really kind of fitting each recipe so that, when you pull out that recipe card, you've got exactly what you need to prepare the dish, and that it's in the right quantities. And it's a really good amount of food, because we're on a plan right now where it's for meals designed for couples. And that's also another challenge. Like when we cook up a meal, often those quantities are like for a family of 4 or family of 6. And sure, that's great. We have leftovers. We can freeze stuff. That's awesome. But it is kind of nice to know, like, I'm making this meal. It's going to take about a half hour. I'm really cooking. I'm not just putting something in the oven. And when we're done, we're going to have 2 filling meals for adults. And then we're done. We just have to clean stuff up afterwards. So it's really great.
And then you have to prepare the baby food afterwards. It's just, that's always fun too, right?
What's cool is, again, knowing that they're fresh ingredients. I mean, even down to the fact where a lot of the produce, you're like, oh, make sure you rinse off the produce. I didn't do a very good job of washing off kale in one of the first meals, and there was like a little bit of dirt still in there. And you're like, oh, wow, this kale really came from the ground. But because of all the fresh ingredients and knowing that we were the ones preparing them, we've got our thermometers, we're making sure everything's cooked to the right temperatures. We haven't really felt any angst over feeding our daughter from the meals that we're putting together for ourselves. And even though she's only 15 months old, I mean, she's been jumping in. Like, she loves mushrooms as like a little baby. She loves garlicky things. She loves curry. I have a 15-month-old baby that likes curry. That's amazing. And I don't know that we would have discovered this if it hadn't been for some of the creativity of some of the meals that have come from Blue Apron. Again, a very responsibly sourced and renewably sourced produce and meats. They can fit any kind of dietary restriction, except for like, I still don't think, I said this 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to repeat it now. I still don't think they do the best job with hardcore vegan. But vegetarian meals have actually been really good. Maybe a little high in the carb count if you're trying to watch your carb intake. The vegetarian meals can be a little higher on that carb side. But otherwise, just about any type of dietary restriction, religious dietary restriction, or allergy, they can work with you to make sure that they're sending you meals that you can actually eat. Again, high quality, fresh ingredients. And each serving is only about $10. So, a meal for 2 is about $20. And again, it's a full meal. So you really do feel like they're doing a pretty good job of balancing paying for the service, because you are putting a premium on the stuff being shipped to you and them sorting out all of the ingredients for you.
Well, I was just bought that, Blue Apron, you turned the baby into a curry fanatic. So hooray for that. I'm sold.
I mean, it was like that alone worth the price of admission. So getting to their spiel, cooking together can help improve family bonds, and Blue Apron families cook together 3 times more often. And we have been spending more time in the kitchen, but not like spending more time in the kitchen. It's I'll wheel my daughter's high chair in there, and we're all sort of hanging out, and I'm throwing stuff in skillets, and it's a lot of fun.
Just spending time in the kitchen in the first place.
Well, and spending time together. Yeah, exactly. And so you will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So do not wait. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free by going to blueapron.com/pocketnow. Blueapron.com/pocketnow. I'm personally super stoked to have them on as a sponsor this week. This is something that's right up my alley. If you're looking at just trying to get a little bit more creative in the kitchen, I would definitely recommend checking them out. I just love their spec, their talking point, where it's like, if you like a recipe, you have to hold on to that recipe card, because they can feed you, I think, something like 6 meals a week for over a year and never repeat the same recipe twice. So definitely some fun stuff to play with. And we thank them for their support of the Pocketnow Weekly.
And that extra meal is you have to come up with your own, and I usually just go with grass.
Or just, you know what? I mean,
such
like,
a shrub.
I'll be the first one to start jumping down that rabbit hole. I'm going to do an app review on this app called Zero. It was just plugged by Kevin Rose. If you're going to start eating grass, I would maybe recommend switching over into broccoli sprouts, as some of the chemicals in broccoli sprouts we're starting to see research that those types of vegetables, broccoli sprouts, Brussels sprouts, things like that.
Not Rob.
Well, no, that they have a lot of anti-aging properties, that they're going to be really good for your immune system. And also there are chemical compounds that help you pull out air impurities. So like living in Southern California, our air standards have gotten better, but you can definitely see smog on a smoggy day, and that's all going into your lungs. And there are vegetables that can help you deal with that stuff. So, instead of eating grass, eat some broccoli sprouts. Those are probably even more delicious.
Become a vegetable?
Well, according to Wall-E, our love of mobile technology will turn us into vegetables. We'll all just be lumpy potatoes on floating chairs.
Fat vegetables, indeed.
But I don't want us to get caught up like 2 weeks ago when we spent like 15 minutes talking about Blue Apron, and we're pretty close, so we should probably move on.
They were pretty enjoyable 15 minutes, but let's move on to what's happening this week news, I guess, maybe, sort of.
Yeah, this is going to be mostly podcast. Yeah, so I mean, I guess some of the top stories dominating our feeds on pocketnow.com are largely surrounding all of the info that we're getting on the Galaxy S8. The different rumors that are coming down the pipe. We've been talking a lot about things like Bixby. Will Samsung get on board their voice assistant game? What the specs of this phone might be. There's stories about the navigation controls. And I'm glad you started with this image right here, Jules. And
okay.
Oh no, it's okay. You don't have to back up. It's just Evan Blast talking about how there might even be a permanent Samsung logo that is part of the display, not like a strip of plastic at the top of the screen. So while we
wait,
Infinity design, we might
introduced it like that. I cannot be the one to justify why there is a Samsung. Like, I don't want to justify why a Samsung always-on branding thing on screen.
No, I think it's on you, Jules. I think if this comes to pass, everyone will point to you and say it was your fault that this happened. That they'll probably start sending you angry letters, and I mean like letters. Like they will write out letters on pieces of paper and put them in envelopes and affix postage to them to let you know their displeasure over your decision, yours and yours alone, to allow Samsung to put a ridiculous banner name on the top of their phone. I mean, like, I don't know. With all the other rumors that we've seen, do we think that it's likely that Samsung would really waste that kind of space on an infinity wraparound glass design just to have their logo front and center?
Well, I'll tell you why. I'm going to educate you. You ready?
Do it.
So the screen, there are 2 variants, 5.8-inch screen and 6.2-inch screen. They won't be too terribly bigger than previous S7s because they're going to have it's basically, the display is going to take up most of the 3% screen to body ratio. But the main factor here is that we're going to see a taller display than even what the LG G6 is teed up for us. So LG G6, it's 18:9, and I use that like unreduced, or
Mm-hmm.
the what the that ratio, to
Mm-hmm.
say that what we're seeing on the Galaxy S8 is apparently 18.5 to 9.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much outdoing LG in terms of. Now the screen's going to eat up the hardware navigation keys and the well. So
Yeah.
there, you could see some justification for seeing. There is no
So what do
justification
you
for
think? I mean,
getting.
like there's so many Samsung fans that really like the idea of hardware controls and hardware home buttons. Like I think this might actually this phone, for it being as bleeding edge as we think it might be, might introduce some actual culture shock to the Samsung faithful.
All I'm worried about is, screenshotting screen and then not having to see the Samsung logo at the top. That's my worry right now. Now,
Right.
there is, I mean, it's a tall enough screen, and if Samsung wants to brand their device in whatever way they want, they've always had their logo on the front of the device as well as the back. So hey, they're allowed to go for it. It's capitalism. What do you expect? But it's I don't know how I feel in terms of the execution, because we don't have much of indication as to how it's being
Right.
done. Is that it's hard coded? Evan Blass says. So yeah, there's a software navigation bar that's going to take a little bit at the bottom of the screen, and then we have a top quarter inch of the screen that's going to be Samsung. Those those logos.
Okay, so
That.
there's a part of me that really hopes this is true. There's a part of me that I mean, like, for all of the ire, I was even listening to the All About Android podcast, and they were talking trash about, oh, second screen on the V20. It's just so dumb, and there are only like 5 people who like it.
Mm,
That's my impersonation of what all of the voices on All About Android would sound like if you were to merge them into one being, like the love child of all 3
I
hosts
say
and the guest.
you don't lump in Florence Iron into that, because
Well,
I
actually,
like that
that's fair.
gal.
That's fair. She was not on the episode where they were trashing the V20, although I know
Oh,
she's
okay.
not the biggest V20 fan.
Well, there you
But
go.
so the V20, the second screen actually provides, some functionality. Whether or not you use that functionality, I totally appreciate when a consumer says, like, hey, that's not for me. But if Samsung uses screen real estate to just put their logo at the top of the phone, I'm going to be ruthless to all of the people that were talking trash about the V20's ticker display, which I use all the time. So I can't wait. There's a part of me that really hopes this happens, because I'm sure this is going to be a good phone, the S8, so
Oh
long
yeah.
as Samsung sorted out whatever QA issues they feel were holding them back with the Note. I'm very positive that Samsung is going to do some really cool stuff. This sounds like it's going to be a really cool phone. If they pull off this branding exercise, though, oh, I'm going to have so much fun. Oh, I'm going to
I
have
can't.
so much fun with that.
And there will be like a count up timer for when XDA is able to, just hack it out.
Exactly. Totally. Oh man, I mean, like, I finally got all of the pixels back for my display. Thank you, XDA
Yeah.
developers.
So some of the other specs that we're looking at here, the Galaxy S7 engaged in 2 SoCs, Qualcomm and Exynos, both made in Samsung
Right.
foundries. Looks like we're going to see the same arrangement here for the Snapdragon 835 and the Exynos 8895, both of them on 10 nanometer processes. Again, 5.8-inch and 6.2-inch models, Super AMOLED, and they'll be sure what the resolution is, but I think
Right.
we're going by 1440p for the resolution. 4 gigs of RAM like last year, but the only storage option, I believe, or the base storage option at least, is 64 gigabytes, so up from 32. Always good to see that. Not good to it's not good to see it when we get to the price tag, but we'll come on to that. Micro SD is expandable. Other rumors have pointed out waterproof, continued
Yeah,
waterproofness
I think
from the
there would be
S7,
another uproar if they tried to walk that back like they did on the S6.
but I mean, who knows? We haven't seen that in these recent uh, rumors from the Guardian as well as Evan Blass.
Hmm.
In terms of what we're talking about for battery, it's a fairly conservative bit here. 3,000 for the smaller and 3,500 milliamp hours
Yeah,
for
that
the
I found
bigger.
surprising for some of the talking points there, where the smaller one isn't that small. That
Yeah,
we
but
that
it's
that
powering a bigger display, slightly bigger display. It's powering more UI elements that would
right.
be more software elements that would be fitting to such a large phone, or such a phone that makes its presence out to be so large. There's more
So
of a
do you think
big.
that that might be a conservative response to what happened with the Note 7, that not having the larger capacity battery? Because I mean, we saw the Galaxy
Yeah.
S7 Edge with a 3,600 milliamp hour cell, to see that drop on a 5.8-inch display, knowing that it's more screen in a very similar overall footprint, that this is maybe Samsung trying to play it safe with any potential battery expansion issues.
Uh, every when we saw the whole conference happen with Samsung mobile president, oh, the case for the Note 7 in terms of exploding was mostly the first cause. A was always going to be, oh, there was this little indentation, or that there was a manufacturing. Cause B, which was downplayed, in my opinion, was
Mhm.
the fact that there were maybe the design of the phone and the design of the battery had to do with it.
Yeah.
While the manufacturing errors were different from both the supplier Samsung SDI and Amperex, uh, that design was common, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like, it seems like this is more of a subtle, drawback in terms of Galaxy S8. Like, they're not publicly addressing, or they're not making a big deal about you know, their design, but
Right.
it's somewhat of a reaction. So there we go on that. Not much in terms of the cameras. We're seeing the same ones basically, except for the fact that there's we believe, or I believe actually, because silly me, I wrote this thing, that the Bixby assistant is going to OCR mode, so that you can take what you see in the camera and search online for it. And I think that to trademark for Bixby Vision,
Oh, okay.
good sounding name for what that feature might be called. Uh, Also, an iris scanner. It's just 12 megapixel rear, f1.7 aperture, and then there's also 8 megapixel. Big news about the release date, or the Unpacked event date. It's still happening in New York. We're not going to see this at MWC,
Nope.
but it's going to be March 29th, so pre-April. Lots of centered around April, but apparently March
Well,
29th.
then, like, pre-April by the skin of March's teeth.
By
It's
the
like,
skin of March's teeth,
so
but
do you
I
think though
mean,
that with it being so late in March, that, because this is the frustration that I had. We were on the podcast talking about HTC announcing and then
we'll get
taking a long
started
time
about
to
the.
deliver. Do you think that Samsung might announce and then have a pretty reasonable quick a reasonably fast timeline to getting these
Uh,
phones out on store shelves?
no, because the first sales and shipments are expected April 21st.
So we might be looking at another month out from the actual announcement.
So, or 3 weeks, but then again, who's counting really? Especially when we talk about price. So apparently, Europe's going to see this thing start at $799 and
Yeah, I know.
$899,
Oh
and then
man.
yeah, that's 100 euros up from the typical pricing. So
Yeah.
yeah, what?
I really think because again, there were a lot of people that were a bit crabby about the Note's pricing, and I felt like the Note brought so many hardcore power user features to the table that the pricing made sense. And I think we're omitting the S Pen, and that the S8 is kind of drawing on the same thing. Like there are newer technologies, newer screen technologies, newer chipsets that are going into these phones where, and especially a newer design language. You know, just the notion of replacing the navigation hardware controls that we've all gotten used to on Samsung phones with software and with the ultrasonic fingerprint reading through the screen tech. I kind of feel like this is probably going to be appropriate if you're expecting Samsung to back off or to not be a premium handset manufacturer. Then you're going to walk through life being far more disappointed than if you sort of accept the fact that that's what they're gearing these devices for.
I mean, it's part of that is just going to be. I'm trying to figure out the word that I want to use, but just appeal or curb appeal to it, because big screens mean big bucks. It means it looks nice, and you're going to catch your eye to it, and won't be using it that much at the carrier store or whatever, because you'll be
Right.
pre-ordering it like hotcakes, right?
Right. You won't be able to
You're gonna be
contain
impressed.
yourself. In fact, you've probably already just sort of thrown money at a Samsung
Yeah,
billboard and not even realized it. You just like reached in
and
your wallet
it's
and just threw it. And you just
yeah,
like, take it, take my money. Because
and
that's
especially the case where Note 7 users were promised discounts on the S8 just for switching back to an S7 for a little while. So we're talking about less margins or perhaps no margins at all for Samsung in terms of those customers, of which there are 3 million of them. And if you notch maybe like even the 20% of just taking up that discount,
mm-hmm.
that's a pretty big chunk out of
Not
however many
too
they're going to
shabby.
sell. And I don't know, like
I'll be really curious to see what the kind of follow through on that is. I mean, we're still so early yet into the ramifications of the Note 7 having been canceled to
well,
see how many people just sort of jump onto this as their next solution.
yeah.
I think actually this will probably prove to be successful for Samsung in that regard. They've got a bunch of people on hold, and like I said before, I think they sort of, the Note was their big mistake. As long as they don't make another one, I think people will be willing to forgive them if what they deliver next is a compelling and feature-packed experience.
And they've been hyping up also their other series of Galaxy phones as well, which are, they range from like premium, but not S level, to just, basic mid rangers. And it's kind of hard to see, lots of movement or momentum between, being aspirational,
Yeah.
getting the aspirational buyer to come along, especially when you've raised the bar of entry to set $800 or
But
whatever.
I think, you know what? I know people complain about pricing and stuff, but there's a part of me, I really think you put the price tag on there and consumers are going to equate that with premium, with quality, with high end, with luxury. And
But
I
only to a
don't think it's
point.
going to work against them. No, you're not wrong, but I
I'm
think we
trying.
still
I
have
don't know
yet
where
to
the.
hit that buffer. I don't think we've hit the threshold where it's going to turn off more people than it attracts. I think we have a little bit of wiggle room in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to the point where we're talking about Virtu or
No. And especially in
Tagware.
an era where Google can be making serious traction with the Pixel, which I mean really isn't that significantly compelling an upgrade over the Nexus 6P. I mean, if we're
But if we're
really looking year to year what those phones had to offer, we're looking at Google delivering at being able to charge a higher margin, which is good for the company because they're going to be more profitable. And there are some fun additional software tricks, but there's nothing on my Pixel that makes me really feel like this is a substantially different phone than what the Nexus line had offered in the past as compared to the competition of the past.
well, I mean, when we're getting to the point where we're talking about a near infinity display or whatever you want to brand it as, like, that has a visual striking impact, but it
Mhm.
also, you might say, do I really need that? Like, is that the point where the consumer draws the line? I mean, if that's the case, Samsung's definitely towing it. So,
Oh, no. I think you're right, but I also think it's what we're also seeing, because what we're seeing is the law of diminishing returns. You're going to charge a lot more for smaller and smaller improvements, right? But there are a couple things going on. Like, this screen is a different orientation, a different
aspect ratio, yeah.
aspect ratio than previous displays. At the same time, we have those rumors that it might be a proper RGB stripe. So even with it being such a higher resolution, it's also going to be a more sub-pixel dense display, and that's going to cost additional funds. Like, that's
Yeah.
a more expensive screen to produce, as you tool up manufacturing to really support that aspect ratio at that sub-pixel resolution. I mean, little things like that, whether or not that they really contribute to radically changing the user experience, I agree with you. I find that dubious, but that's why you've got something that costs money. There are plenty of things on a Mercedes that don't necessarily really radically improve the driving experience, but it's on a Mercedes, and there are so many of them that's why you charge more for a Mercedes than you do for
Listen,
anything else in Daimler's.
listen. I mean, we're all in it for the heated cup holders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
the
how do
only
you how
thing
do
that's
you
getting
keep
me.
your jug o' coffee warm? I mean, come on.
Oh, what are you talking about, jug? They don't have jug holders. Come on.
So, one thing we forgot to mention, as we got started off in the show, is how to get in contact with us for this show
Oh,
using
hi.
the PN Weekly hashtag. I forgot too. You're fine, Jules. This is on me. The PN Weekly hashtag, or shooting us an email, podcast@pocketnow.com. We've got a ton of PN Weekly comments on Twitter. I'm going to blow through these
See that
really, really,
reaction.
really quickly. From Chamford Edges, one of our all-time favorite Twitter handles, with a new Galaxy S redesign after the S6, that had me thinking, I don't know what SGD $1,200.
Singapore.
$1,200
Let me
Singapore
just.
dollars for the base model. All dem gimmicks in one, boy. And I agree. This is going to be a pricey phone. I don't know what that converts to in North American dollars.
$840.
I would imagine something like that is completely within the realm of possibility. So Joel GJ asks, do you think that Samsung got kicked in the mind share of consumers? Hashtag PN Weekly. I got into a couple really knockdown, drag out fights on Twitter that some people thought Samsung's press conference wasn't enough. And some people thought, well, no one really cares. All it's doing is reminding people that there was a problem and everyone had moved on. And I was sort of stuck in between these two bookends. Like, you're both kind of wrong. Like, I kind of feel like Samsung had to put on a show, and I really don't believe that consumers have let this go. I think consumers really wanted to know that, not know all the particulars. I mean, I was really impressed by the level of technical detail that Samsung went through in explaining their investigation. I had no illusions that general consumers, non-tech fanatic consumers, really cared about all of that minutia, but they wanted to know that
But
the investigations had been done. It's like when someone asks you for tech
but
support, they don't really care. Like, they ask you, well, how did you know how to do that? They don't really care about the answer. They just want to know that you really did know what the answer was. So they
you know
expect a
what
little
the
bit of an
answer
explanation,
was,
and their eyes glaze over.
and you're sorry. But if there's one freaking issue with that, if you even paid attention just a little bit, you would have noticed battery design.
Yeah.
Is that's not something to do the manufacturers? Oh, it's Samsung. Samsung designs the batteries. Samsung designs the phones. Are they going to are they going to fix that? Are they going to apologize for that? Do they know? I know what they're sorry. And what are they sorry
Are
for?
you sorry?
Are you really sorry? Apologize to
Yeah,
me right
so,
now. Come on, please.
yeah, like, I need a Samsung PR rep, Phil. If you could just come over and just, I don't know, buy me a coffee, maybe get me a croissant. Just let me know that you're really sorry.
Really
I would
sorry.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
But Joel GJ also writes, if there's a, using the PN Weekly hashtag, if there's a Verizon variant of the Galaxy S8, with the front logo be where the carrier tramp stamp goes. You need your Samsung logo at the top of the screen with a big, ugly, off-center red check mark to remind you at all times what carrier your phones are.
Yeah, it's just bitmaps. Just use bitmaps.
Exactly. No, totally. I need an animated GIF of the check mark being checked every time I swipe on the screen. From Mark Washington, I'm excited about the HTC U Ultra and its second screen, #Google Assistant. I'm telling you guys, I mean, again, it is a gimmick. I wholly, completely admit that the second ticker display on the V20 is a gimmick, but it's a solution in search of a problem. And when you find the problem that works for you in addressing the second screen as a solution, you don't want to give it up. It does actually do stuff. And
I should say, I should mention that out the door SWAT, yes, the fingerprint sensor is behind the camera, or beside the camera, and not under the display. They didn't do that, and I did not mention that. So hopefully the record shall prove me right, but we'll see. And if
we'll definitely have to see, because as you start messing around with stuff like that, I mean, the ergonomics on the back of the phone. I know so many people that just like complain, like, I keep smudging up my camera.
Well, I mean, Evan Blass was just all like, "Hey, this would be bad for people with small hands, like at real Donald Trump." So, good job, Evan.
Oh, poor guy. I mean, like, according to Reddit investigators, it looks like he's still on like a Galaxy S3 or something like that, or S3 or an S4, and that makes sense because it's a smaller phone. I mean, he might be intimidated to move up to anything larger than a 4.8-inch screen. He might have to go to an iPhone. I mean, if that's the case.
No, what he's going to do is he needs a BlackBerry. He needs one of those Mercury phones.
I can't wait until he gets an actual like intelligence agency approved smart.
I can't wait until he gets intelligence. Oh, wait, that might be good or bad. I don't know.
Oh, we're not going to talk politics, though.
Hi, welcome to the Pocketnow Weekly.
So just a couple other quick comments. Steve Becker, no physical keys on the Galaxy S8. Are they adopting on-screen keys or doing something with chances of alienating users? Nope, it's going to be software controls, which is why the screen has a different aspect ratio. I need to correct myself because you fixed me there too, Jules. Someone calling me out on the fingerprint scanner being embedded in the display, and that's not the case. I have my phones confused. So everyone who is screaming at your phone or, at your car stereo while listening to this podcast, I apologize. And then Ed Maudlin, Ed from @TechFiles, joining us in the Twitter chat here using the PN Weekly hashtag.
He's not sorry.
He is not sorry. And we love him for it. He writes, the public needs to be educated to tell the difference between the subsidized phone and the unlocked phone price. Until then, meh. Now
he's a Metro PCS trainer or something. So if he wants to, make sure that his trainees do that, and I suppose he does, then
I actually think and to his credit, I mean, to his point and his credit there, I really think that we're starting to see that transition happen where consumers are more aware. Baby steps. We're only a couple years out from how people used to just buy phones on contract. Where all you would know is the subsidized price. And now people are starting to pay attention, like, hey, my bill drops every 2 years, and then I get a new phone and my bill gets more expensive again. I think this is going to be something that, as the smartphone market in first world countries is plateauing, that I think consumers are going to be willing to start examining, or more willing to start examining, other purchasing solutions. And this is a huge opportunity. I think the timing is absolutely on point for these sort of premium mid-rangers that are coming out from ZTE and from Honor and from OnePlus, and Alcatel.
So I just read that Virgin Mobile Canada is actually taking in the ZTE Axon 7 Mini, which is quite the handsome phone for that little, or relatively speaking, a little bit of a change. So pretty prominent placing there.
Yeah, I think they're like in talking about opportunities. I don't think it'll be too long before a company like Huawei is able to leverage the Honor brand into prepaid. Playing with an Honor 6X, like that is a killer little phone for the price. And there's so much that phone has to offer that I think general consumers, would play if they were ever able to play with one. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of opportunity to experiment with this stuff. But if they were, I think it would seriously make a number of consumers question, why should I pay more for a phone? This is doing what I need it to do, and it's doing it really well.
Oh,
And it's
yeah.
doing it at a ridiculously low price point.
They're just tying it right now. They've been doing it for a while. They're just tying it to prepaid and all that. So, yeah, it really depends on whether or not postpaid really gets back on the ball, especially with the big two. We'll talk more about, but how about
Yeah,
the
we got some
Apple?
carrier news coming up. Well, and we were talking about intelligence. And sorry, I knew I was going to sidetrack myself on that. But
Yeah,
speaking of intelligence and people who don't use iPhones, Apple is actually making a move that I am hugely in support of, and that is
bigly.
bigly, like enormously in support of, where they are joining a partnership which is currently led by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, and IBM in developing the future of artificial intelligence. And so whatever kind of, voice assistant stuff they might be working on, I think it is absolutely the right play to be working on standards, to be addressing ethical issues as it pertains to artificial intelligence in more of a public group setting. So I don't think this will really affect Apple's skunk works, the stuff that they, as a company that they're still really pretty good at keeping stuff under wraps. But
yeah,
having more of their AI plan detailed in public, I think only helps to serve the conversation moving forward on AI, because I think there are going to be a lot of doom and gloom again, like how we started some of this.
I mean, it's easy. Yeah, it's easy to envision
story.
Yeah, all that stuff, all that crap going down the drain. So if Apple, knows not to do evil, and it's for everyone's sake that we get some best practices going, and they get the right people and the right focus on it, and I mean, congratulations to whoever's getting into that Yokohama plant in Japan for R&D on AI. Lots of letters there, but yeah, it's a good sign, and more power to all y'all at those places.
Well, and also, I mean, just the selfishness of, however you might feel about Apple as a company, I still think that they bring a very well considered consumer focus to the way that they approach the development of their products. And so while a company like Microsoft, I mean, you look at what they're doing with HoloLens, and it is incredible work. But it also feels like it's a long way coming before we see that with any kind of direct consumer application.
Well, most of the packaging for consumers and most of the interface for consumers is still, they can still claim those as trade secrets. So they can do a lot of that, make it their own, make it Siri, make it whatever they want. It's just sort of the groundwork is just, that the basics that are needed are just going to be open source. So, I mean, it leaves out a lot of room.
Oh, definitely. And with IBM in that partnership, this is every opportunity for me to be
to keep talking about the
Watson. If we want to make Siri better, I can't think of any company that could make Siri better than working closely with IBM. Again, when I pick up my phone and I utilize voice search or a voice assistant, I want the infrastructure that beat the two most winningest Jeopardy contestants replying to my queries. That's what I want. So if my whole phone were just that, I would be so happy. I would
is the
query that phone in like all of my responses would be in the forms of answers, so that it could ask me the questions in return that were applicable to my search terms. I would be doing cartwheels.
So partnership on AI, is the partnership is that word just code for hookup, or is there something else going on? Are Siri and Watson getting together here?
Mm-hmm. No, I would hope so. I would hope so bad. The love child of Siri and Watson would be so cool.
AI babies.
Actually, the love child of Siri, Watson, Cortana, Google Now, and Alexa would be amazed. It would be like Arnold Schwarzenegger from Twins. That's what we want in a voice assistant.
I would call it Lovelace.
As in
Ava? Or no, wait. I don't remember her name.
Huh.
She was the one that made the first computer, right?
Oh.
All the way back in the couple centuries.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's
sorry.
Terrible of me.
I think it's Ada Lovelace, but I can't remember my names. So moving on, and
but I would be happy to name it that if that's what we want to name it.
All right. So. Yeah. Ada. Let me just Google it real quick so that we can just Ada Lovelace. That's the name. Early mechanical general purpose computer. Yeah, she definitely the analytical engine from the 1815 to 1852. So
this is we can move on. We have one other short Apple story, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this because I think we're going to try and put together. Actually, Jules and I were talking about trying to put together a more comprehensive editorial on what's going on with this. But Jules, can you just talk us through the most recent development in this Qualcomm and Apple standoff? There's apparently patent lawsuits going back and forth, and now Qualcomm is saying that even though there are legal disputes, that they're still going to be partnering with Apple for development of future Apple chipsets.
Qualcomm cannot seem to get itself out of the whole the notion of it cornering clients for using competitors' products, and we've seen that in a fine from Korean regulators, from a lawsuit from the FTC, and from several suits actually from Apple, 2 in China, 1 in the US. And it seems like they're just talking about royalties. Qualcomm has actually withheld royalties apparently, so Apple claims. And then there's also a couple of issues about patent licensing and the terms used and rates that don't seem to be fair and whatnot. But that all has Qualcomm investors worried. Qualcomm reported a big hit in terms of earnings per share because of the fine that they received from the Korea Fair Trade Commission. Otherwise, they would have met analyst targets. But in just addressing all of this, CEO Stephen Mollenkopf said that we intend to remain a good supplier to Apple, even while our preference is to resolve customer disputes with negotiation instead of litigation. So it's regrettable that Apple has taken this path. And now, there's a whole bunch of disputes that, in China, they've been going on a renegotiation tour, basically, with all of the major manufacturers because the government said that the terms were not fair, that the licensing terms were
The Chinese government said that the licensing terms weren't fair.
For their 3G and 4G products.
That's an important point to reiterate. Please continue, Jules.
Well, yeah, but it's just it's been maddening, and I looked back into Qualcomm's into the KFTC's records and found that they've been talking about Qualcomm and its quote unquote monopoly SoC industry for a good long time, like 8 years or so. They also had a antitrust complaint back then, so it's just been one case after the other, and Qualcomm has been defending it, and they're going to keep defending it. It's so.
So, do you think that there's any company that could eventually rival? We saw Intel. Intel.
Well,
Intel. Let me try that again. We saw Intel try and walk into this space and basically walk away almost empty-handed. We've seen, Samsung. They make some great chipsets. I don't think have Samsung chipsets shown up in anything else other than that one Xiaomi that we saw a while back.
They've been trying to get into the Chinese market a little bit, but it's been on and
then
off,
in the Chinese market, we've got MediaTek and then HiSilicon, and the Kirin chipsets of late have been killer.
Yeah, but you have to realize that Huawei makes its own chipsets and it cares for number one. So there you go in terms of that. In terms of MediaTek, where it's kind of more of an entry, it's all right. So yeah, it's all of these chip makers, and if you're just an anywhere in the world OEM and you
Mhm.
decide to diversify your chipset sources, then it's claimed that Qualcomm will have a tendency to say, okay, so we're going to raise prices on you because you're dealing with the competition, or in some cases when it
Right.
comes to not agreeing, oh, we're going to withhold these chips from you.
And in the United
Like they're
States, if you want a phone on Sprint or Verizon, then you're
CDMA is definitely the holding point for Qualcomm. Basically, they've been able to capitalize
so
on
yeah, this
everything.
is this is definitely a story that I feel like you and I should probably do a little writing offline and see if we can't
Yeah.
dig just a bit deeper into putting together sort of I mean, for me, it's just most interesting, I think, to kind of follow the timeline
Hmm.
of how all this stuff went down. Using the PN Weekly
A little bit
hashtag
more.
from yeah, and then we'll shoot another video on it.
Yeah.
A whole separate 2-hour long video all about the lawsuits and the radio management and the
Yep. Yep.
chipset development and the chip fab and all of that fun stuff. From Ed Modlin using the PN Weekly hashtag, he's talking about Qualcomm continuing to work with Apple. All caps, of course they will! Exclamation point. Until such a point that Apple doesn't have the lion's share of the market. Of course, that would just be good business sense, I would imagine. It's just always interesting to me because I mean there were also issues, with Samsung and Apple in the midst of some of their most brutal lawsuits, that they were still like, well, we still need to buy a ton of flash memory, or we still need to buy a ton of RAM. Samsung, give us a good deal. Like, again, it's always important to note, like, these are ginormous companies that are very multifaceted and that do a lot of business across a number of different tech sectors, and that it's not just like Samsung is a guy and Apple is a guy and Qualcomm is
Yo,
a
dude.
guy. You're like, dude, brah, why are you suing me? I'm not going to sell you the memory now. You're a jerk. It doesn't work that way.
Yep. Pretty much. They're not. They don't like turn their caps back and start riffing on each other in rap battles.
Well, unless you're HTC, because we know all about that really stonking cool HTC rap, yo, as the kids like their hip hop and are into their street beats. And this
Um.
story
Sure.
actually made me angry. Um,
Did
so
it really?
it did. Okay, no, it did, because we've been going through this on again, off again. What, for 3 years now? That
Yeah.
HTC is working on a smartwatch. HTC is going to do Android Wear. HTC at one point was rumored to be partnered with Qualcomm to do a follow up to the Qualcomm Talk, and that was going to be HTC Smartwatch. And now we've got an HTC executive who comes out and says, no, we are not doing a smartwatch, with sort of an addendum to that being anytime soon. So it's like they couldn't even get the message. We're focused on the HTC U Ultra. This is what we're really planning to do. They mentioned the market and how even Apple couldn't really seem to find a way to drive this as a new growth opportunity. Which, again, this is an accessory to your smartphone. I understand why smartwatches don't sell like crazy. I'm still doing a series on how I'm going to replace my Pebble because I like them, but to then, like, so unequivocally, no, HTC will not be doing a smartwatch, to have someone else then at HTC go, well, I mean, like, probably not, maybe,
Well, I mean,
who knows.
here's the full quote from Qialan Cheng, who's the president of HTC. I can tell you that we're not going to have an Android watch. I don't think we've nailed it with the experience of watches. Android Watch is one thing, but even Apple as a big brand is declining in watches. We are not going to have a watch in the short term. Which is it's like, yeah, that's that, but you haven't had a smartwatch in the short term. I think there's been like there has been talk about that from the company um in the
But I mean,
past, but
just
you
like,
know,
just saying no, like,
just say no.
if the company, because I really feel HTC is benefiting from focus on things like moving outside of just straight up mobile. HTC developing a reputation for kick-ass VR, right? The Vive makes HTC look cool. If they don't think that they can bring something interesting to smartwatches, one, just for the sake of the company, don't waste any money trying to develop smartwatch stuff. Just walk away. No one's going to be upset by that. I love smartwatches. If HTC came out with a press release tomorrow and said, hey, you know what? It doesn't make sense for our company. This isn't something that we think we can bring value to this market. So we're just going to let other manufacturers take the lead on this. I would say kudos. I think that would be a brilliant thing to do. But this wishy-washy, like, well, no, and even Apple couldn't, so no, we're not gonna. But maybe in the future sometime. You're like, no, you've already missed what little window there was for smartwatches to be hot sellers. If you walked into the smartwatch market now, that would be tragic. There's no way you would build up any cool consumer cred with a manufacturing move like that. Just walk away and just stick to it. Say no and walk away.
The sad thing about what we saw, like maybe this week or last week, was a whole bunch of pictures of the HT. It's the half beak. It was with Under Armour, and supposedly
Right.
we saw the pictures.
And again, so look at like what an amazing opportunity for HTC to say, we're going to develop a strategic partnership with another, like Fitbit. Like we're going to develop a strategic partnership with Fitbit so that our assistant, our AI software on the U Ultra can communicate with your fitness tracker to do these things.
But there's strong reason to believe that
own hardware.
That these pictures didn't come from immediately from that week, because this thing is running Android 5.1.1 and Android Wear 1.3. I don't know. It just seems like a thing left behind in the dust. Like that's.
Well, and again, I would totally expect every manufacturer out there was probably working on some kind of mock-up hardware, and especially from the photo that you were showing here, I'm going to click on it so that it actually pops up. Some of the leaked and rumored HTC devices that we've seen for wearables. I totally believe that they were experimenting in-house with this. I'm telling HTC, cut that department, brush them off, walk away, and put that money towards finding new opportunities for HTC to continue branding itself as a cool, hip, on the pulse company like Vive. Do more stuff like that.
Make a car.
Other people let watch manufacturers struggle with making smartwatches for a while.
Make a car.
Make a car. Do it.
Or make a moped, because you're in Taiwan, so you can definitely just go get it with a moped, and then everyone will be happy.
Or at least, I mean, because this is a comment from Mark Washington using the PN Weekly hashtag. Under Armour is doing a smartwatch made by HTC, so technically they are not like the Google Pixel in his opinion. I know HTC has significant roots as being an ODM, an original device manufacturer, and they would make hardware for other companies to slap their logos on. I'm fine with that. If Under Armour wants to do all of the work in designing and tweaking software and developing their companion app and doing all that stuff, you could do way worse than partnering with HTC as the manufacturer. HTC makes beautiful hardware. I just don't want that stuff at HTC, sucking up HTC time and HTC resources. I want HTC to continue scoring victories in areas that make everybody excited to talk about HTC again.
Well, I mean, it could be just an imaging issue in terms of, well, we're an ODM, so we're not talking about this as if it's our own project and whatnot. I mean, there's a lot of ways that spin is happening right now, and, we're just kind of lost in the drift. So, but we know that all these rumors are leading to nothing, so we might as well just look at something like
No, it's so funny because Ed Modlin just wrote on Twitter, they're not developing a smartwatch. Instead, we're going to see them announce 15 different models, 3 of which might see the light of day. We've got a photo up of 9 different mock-ups of HTC smartwatch hardware and 0 Single item. Eggshell. Null set. None. Zilch. And then Joel GJ is agreeing with our sentiment. Maybe the cash is going towards VR. I would love to see HTC dedicating resources towards things that are gonna at least make people excited to talk about the company again. I'm gonna start sounding like a broken record player here.
Indeed. All right. Well, you want to take the record off of HTC and onto put the needle
I think we better had
to a Japan display.
Yeah, because this is something that people keep telling me is going to be wicked crazy exciting, and I still don't get why, other than the cool factor of things that can bend. But it's officially official that Japan LCD has shown off their flexible displays. If you can talk us through this, Jules, I need to get a quick sip of water.
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about Apple. We're talking about its iPhone, whatever it's going to be in 2018. We know that Samsung, or we assume that Samsung is going to be providing most of the OLED panels for the new fancy curved display iPhone 8. And it's just going to be the design language from now on in terms of Apple's premium hardcore showboat kind of a model. Now what we're hearing now is that other manufacturers it's been the case that other manufacturers have been resigned to waiting until 2019 or 2018 at the earliest, even in terms of fighting for part of that screen share, literally. And in terms of Japan Display, they've been a little bit slow on the OLED uptake. So they've decided to see if they could work out something with their LCD solutions. Sharp has been doing the same somewhat, but with some help from its parent company, Foxconn, it's able to invest in foundries, whereas Japan Display, they've also been trying to do so, but not to the extent that they don't have the monies.
Right.
So Japan Display is decided to publicize this full active flex LCD display. Great. 2017, it's so this initial model is apparently just going to be a 5.5-inch full HD display, and with some specs pretty comparable to other AMOLED products on the market right now. Mass production is scheduled to begin in 2018. And yeah, that's going to be fighting against Sharp. That's going to be fighting against all the other display manufacturers out there for part of Apple's payload. So, I mean, we've been talking about, AMOLED, very nice in quality and very, there might be still room, a price, at least I'm not sure about price at this point, but there could be room for flexible LCDs to come into play.
Some of the specs that they're talking about on what this display is going to bring to the table. The full active flex has typical luminance of 500 candelas per square meter. I don't know what that relates to, as we normally measure displays by nits, or in our case, my light meter measures in lux. So we have all these different terms for how we describe screen brightness.
Yeah,
but I was
crazy.
Impressed to see this contrast ratio. So what I will be so curious to see a teardown of a Japan Display device, because with curved or with flexible displays, AMOLED makes sense because each pixel makes its own light. So I'll be really curious to see how they solve the issues with uniform brightness with a display technology which technically needs some form of backlight. Unless what we're seeing in a flexible LCD is sort of a missing link between LCD displays and between LCDs, not ATM machines, between LCDs and AMOLED displays. I sound like such a dork.
Well, I mean, you're at Pocketnow, aren't you? Aren't you supposed to be
Right. I was like, our unknown tagline at Pocketnow.
Hello, my name is Dork.
Dorkalicious. Yeah.
Dorkalicious. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird.
Oh, it was weird so long ago. So no, that's actually what I'm really fascinated by is how do you solve the issue of uniformity and brightness across a curved display And that's what I really want to see what they can solve. Now, some of the other specs, I don't think I'd find it super surprising if a 2018 iPhone at a 5.5 inch display diagonal still had a 1080p screen. I think Apple's still pretty well set on that for whatever sort of normal iPhone might be coming down the pike. So whether or not we see anything higher resolution on maybe a Pro device or a Plus super excellent thumbs up device, I don't know. But I think what we'll have to see is just acknowledging that multiple vendors are probably going to have to source. Apple's going to have to source these displays from multiple vendors to make up the type of shipping numbers that they're going to need.
So, and of course, we're not seeing maximum minimum numbers here. We're just seeing, just median, average, typical things. And also, there's also, concern about color shifting, because I have played around with some of the LTPS solutions, and you get one way. If you tilt the display one way, you get a little blue tint. You tilt it the other way, it's so in terms of just IPS, it's a little bit better. But even with that, you're dealing with that curve. How the crystals will interact with the light is just going to be
that's a really good point, along with what hold on, I just lost it, from Panzer Z, using the PN Weekly hashtag on Twitter. A good use for flex display would be better form-fitted VR displays or more comfortable wearables. So if they're able to address uniformity and then also any type of color shift that might happen from looking slightly off angle on a display like that, then there are a number. I mean, Panzer Z brings up two really great points, a number of other areas which could benefit from this type of display technology.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's something to look forward to. But I mean, I'd have to see it to believe it. That's all I'm saying.
And then Panzer Z writes, well, yeah, it'd be easy. All you need to do is put a flexible white OLED backlight layer behind the flexible LCD. So you just have just a 1080p screen of all white pixels. OLED to provide the light for your LCD. Simple.
Thank you, Panzer Z.
That is the best thing.
Good job.
Good job. And there's one executive at Japan Display who thinks that's an amazing idea, and all of the people in the cubicles around him hate that guy. So a really short story, moving right along, really short story. This one actually affects a friend of mine who's doing some...
Hugo Barra is your friend?
Company. No, Hugo Barra is not, but he's done some work with an old Nokia blogger pal of mine, Clinton Jeff, who's now working at Xiaomi. And I'm just disappointed on Hugo's behalf, because the last big announcement that he got to deliver for Xiaomi was a well-received but somewhat lackluster presentation for Xiaomi's new TV. A really sexy looking TV. I will totally grant him that. But for all of the cool stuff that will eventually be coming from their phone division, we were all hoping to see some strategy for the United States or the North American market, or what their next phone might be.
It seemed like they made it to the U.S. market, but just barely. It's like, okay, we're kind of still very timid about what's going on.
And not really. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's kind of maddening to see, the guy who introduced, he did a pretty good job of introducing the Mi 5. That was the big thing.
Oh, totally. No, that's what was, again, so disappointing for his last hurrah to be that TV. So now, instead of being the charming, engaging face of Xiaomi announcing new phones, he's going to be the charming, engaging VP of virtual reality for Facebook. which is the photo that we're actually looking at on the screen right here, are the Hugo and Mark. I don't know. They're not me's. I don't know what those are.
Well, they're Oculus VR characters, I guess. And since he's still at
I don't know
Xiaomi,
what you hip kids are into with your VR cartooning and stuff.
Well, Hugo's actually 40, so he's
yeah, you damn millennials with all your VRs and ARs and PRs and stuff.
Anyway, so he's still at Xiaomi for the time being, but he'll be leaving it next month after the new year. By the way, New Year is tomorrow, so Happy New Year, Happy Rooster Year from here in Hong Kong. And he's just going to be, he's going to be moving over because living in such a singular environment have taken a huge toll on my life, and started affecting my health, aka smog, pollution, PM 2.5 levels, cancer air, lovely cancer air that we love to breathe here. And he's moving over to Menlo Park, and with Facebook to be vice president of virtual reality. And it's nice to see that he's definitely hitting one of his dreams. At least that's what he says. And that he's taken over a little bit of a troubled entity, given that Oculus VR, its founder Palmer Luckey, has caused controversy in terms of the politics, and he's been detracting developers from that, and also just seeing what he can do to revive second place VR. It's early in the game still, but it's still kind of the also ran, even though it had its name out first. Don't you feel?
Well, no. Yes, I absolutely do. And I feel like this is one of those really precious situations where VR hasn't taken off in terms of consumer content and experiences. There's still, I think, the potential where VR could end up kind of like 3D TVs, where there's hype, no content, people spending money on hardware, waiting for cool things to happen, and then everyone just sort of
there's all
the
global conglomerates and partnerships on VR.
Yeah, just like there were for 3D TVs. I'm not saying it's likely that it'll go down the path of 3D TVs. I'm just saying it's possible. So one of the exciting things about Oculus is the notion that Facebook has an infrastructure where they can start approaching VR from more than just the gaming perspective. That to me is still one opportunity for Facebook Oculus to leverage that I think they would have better resources at executing well over Vive and Steam. But again, that's just potential. That's not like we will definitely see them realize that potential. It's an opportunity. And so again, if Hugo wanted to take on some newer challenges, then that would definitely be a company that I think I would be interested in checking out, see what kind of stuff that they're doing, and see what kind of lifestyle, consumer interactions and consumer technological approaches that they could leverage. But from Panzer Z, earlier on in our discussion, we were talking about broccoli sprouts. If he were eating more cruciferous vegetables, he'd probably be doing better with his health, because those are the types of chemicals that cruciferous vegetables can help you deal with things like air impurities. So maybe he just needs to be eating more broccoli sprouts. I think that could be his problem.
Maybe. I mean, it's just
or he could just go to Facebook. Either way, broccoli sprouts, Facebook, pretty much the same thing.
I mean, yeah, I guess, sure. Oh man, I don't know about you, but I'm getting pretty hungry.
What sucks is beat. Like in doing any of these
podcasts, yeah.
It makes me want a snack. And right now I'm about 5 days into doing this sort of intermittent fasting. It's not a diet. I'm not calling it a diet. It's just like the timetable at when I eat meals. And so I'm trying to hold to an under 12-hour window of when I can eat. And so that means like I need to stop at around 8 o'clock at night. And you're like, now I'm done. and now I do not snack. And it's like everything I want to do, like right before the show and like right after while I'm getting ready for bed, like I could eat some popcorn. No, I can't. This sucks, So that's
you know what sucks about my situation right now? So I'm hungry. I can't leave because we're doing the show. My family is calling me constantly via the home phone and the cell phone because they're asking me if I can go and eat, and I can't respond to them. And also, and even though it's been clear that I've been, talking because they've heard me talking for the past couple of hours, and now they've decided, oh, they're going to go out and, start calling me. So that's really, but it's the new year.
Jules is scumbag family. Like, don't you wish you were eating this delicious food with us, Jules?
Well, I'm a scumbag too because it's the new year and I should be really taking time off. But you know what? I'm pretty. I also have to pee.
Okay, how much time do you think you got left in you, Jules? Do you just need to go make a run? I can tackle the next story.
Yeah, tackle the next story. Let's talk about LG and how the G5 is always the problem about.
This is another one that got my ire up a little bit. As Jules runs to make a potty break, a bunch of companies are releasing their quarterly statements, and LG released theirs, and that their September quarter, I'm pulling up the numbers right now, that a lot of blame is being levied at the G5 and its weak sales, that we're seeing an overall net loss of around $223 million if we're looking at sort of a US currency conversion. Now, that's overall, though. That's the entire scope and realm of LG as a company. And LG as a company is pretty broad manufacturing. I mean, we were talking about Samsung. LG is kind of in a similar position where they make phones and then they make a whole ton of other things like the washer and dryer that are under my feet at this very moment. So again, it's I think their biggest issue over last year in making phones. The G5 definitely was poorly received. It wasn't one of my favorite phones of last year. Actually, it was one of my least favorite flagship phones of last year.
I don't know about you, but I think I was able to get a lot of my friends to buy one.
Oh, that means you're a terrible friend.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm the scumbag in my family.
Life is better with friends unless they're Jules. Who convinces people to buy LG G5s because he doesn't like his friends. No, I think it's woefully unfair to levy the entire all of the issues facing LG as a company on this one phone. And then again, also to say, like, oh, well, V20 sales have also been very disappointing. And like, again, for very different reasons. This is the opposite situation where I felt like LG was working really hard to advertise a phone which wasn't very good, and then has been like radio silent about one of the best devices they've ever made in the mobile market. But that also means like every other division and department at LG seemed to have kind of lackluster quarters. So it's not just the fault of the G5. I mean, for the people out there that enjoy their G5s, I'm not trying to take anything away from you. And in fact, I'm kind of defending the phone against the entire company using it as a scapegoat, because I don't believe the poor performance of one phone should really be the only reason why LG had a disappointing quarter last quarter.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a disappointing year to be frank. So, yeah, I mean, they can't just but they can't just blame something that came out 3 quarters ago. So
yeah,
they're going to have to see what this G6 is about. I mean, it's kind of a derivative design from the industry, it seems like. But who knows? Maybe it's just enough for them to kick things in the butt.
Well, I'm hoping so, because I don't really think on the whole that the issue is really with things.
Well, the devices, I guess, but it's just there.
Well,
I mean,
even for the G5, I feel like there could have been a conversation with LG PR, with LG marketing, as to how they can get the word out about LG being an option in this market. So many people are going to buy an iPhone, so many people are going to buy a Samsung. what makes your product different. Like, I think the more recent Moto ads have actually been pretty solid advertisements.
Motorola came out with ads. I didn't notice.
Well, I mean, again, they're not getting the run, but the ads themselves, I think, are at least on point. You know, there are those commercials where it's like, oh, remember when you got your first smartphone and everyone was so excited? Well, now smartphones are so humdrum. So shouldn't you have a phone that can turn into speakers or a projector? Which the argument doesn't make a lot of sense, but the commercial's cool and at least showcases what makes the Moto different than a Galaxy or an iPhone. When I see Joseph Gordon-Levitt drumming in a subway for the V20, you have told me less than nothing about the phone, and in fact have just wasted my time as to why I should consider buying an LG product.
You know what was a waste of time? That initial Moto Z ad. Well, it was teasing the Lenovo Tech World event, which we were expecting the Moto Z, and it was about all the nostalgia around the Moto Razr, and it was like, oh my god, like local news was thrilled. Oh, are they going to do a new Moto Razr sometimes like on that date? And after Lenovo Tech World, I heard nothing, not a peep from anyone. That was just done.
Yeah, definitely.
And they say that oh, 1 million sales. That's a victory for us. So I mean, it really depends on where you define the goalposts and how investors take it. So.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Ed Modlin using the PN Weekly hashtag. It wasn't the phone, just bad marketing. I'm inclined to agree, obviously. From Chamford Edges, replying to Ed, or you could say LG just got unfriended, and I imagine him taking his sunglasses off like CSI style, and then
no,
Who plays in the background.
I'm not gonna dignify that.
And then also from Chamford Edges, kind of explains why state media cringe content featuring G5 whenever possible to boost sales. Fat hope then, and that sucks. I don't know. I think a lot of we've been having this problem with like meta commercials for technology since like I don't know what the Palm Pre. We had people dancing for Microsoft Surface tablets and creepy women doing close-ups for slider smartphones, and none of that ever works. But what works is coming up with a brand language or a brand identity where consumers can easily understand what makes your product different, even if it's something small. And it was always, I think, the biggest defeat for HTC that they seem to be walking away from their audio cred. That their speaker tech, their headphone tech was always best in class, and they had a really easy talking point. Do you listen to music on your phone? This is the best. And then they kind of ceded that to LG.
I mean, it was nice, but it struck a niche, and that's good. But and they were able to do that somewhat successfully.
How easy is that one commercial? I mean, you can have the commercial with Joseph Gordon-Levitt dancing in a subway, but to not also have a commercial to say like, do your ears deserve the best? We're the best. Like we can show you all the charts and graphs in the background.
That's not what a phone is about to most people. Even though they use it the most for that, they use Spotify. They spend hours and hours, but they don't connect that. They don't connect the dots on that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is it's not consumers' jobs to connect the dots on all that. It's LG's job to put out all of the pieces so that people can connect what they care about. I mean, it's what Samsung does beautifully well. I mean, dating back to like the S4, where they started to walk away from just trashing Apple in their ads, and instead, what was it? The graduation pool party, and it was the long form. I want to say it was like the 60 or even a 90-second long video, which was cut up into smaller commercials where the phone is waterproof and you can control your TV with the IR blaster, and you can remove the battery and you can put in a memory. I mean, like. They had like that teenager interacting with family members over every individual feature on the phone. And then that video got caught up into like 15 and 30-second spots focusing on one feature so that people understood that was one thing that the Samsung could do that the iPhone couldn't. And here's another thing that the Samsung can do that the iPhone can't. And here's another thing that the Samsung can do that the iPhone can't. Where were our camera commercials for LG? Where was our durability commercial for an LG? Where was our headphone jack?
You just need Lil Wayne pouring champagne and asking where the champagne is, and then buying more.
More.
Yeah. And he could pour more while using the Samsung, using the Galaxy S7 Samsung Pay, and then pour more of it.
And then what did Apple do? Apple made a kick-ass commercial just about the water resistance on the iPhone, and then made a really freaking weird. What's that? The kick-ass commercial for the iPhone, the water resistance. It's got AC/DC. The dude's like suiting up, getting on his bicycle, and there's a thunderstorm outside, and you're like, "Yeah, my phone's waterproof." Not really. It's water resistant.
All I've been seeing from them is just the whole, using the bold San Francisco type and making like super clever, text videos, and it's just. Yeah, that's nice. That's good.
Oh, no. The one that's weirding me out right now is the one for their stereo speakers. It's the old guy who's diving off the high dive. It's tying together that it's water resistant because he splashes and the water hits his phone, but it's really focused on the stereo speakers on the new iPhone. And that commercial I find to be unsettling and confusing. But the iPhone commercial about the water resistance it's a 30-second spot just about the iPhone's water resistance, and it's awesome. I mean, that commercial like gets you amped. It's the right music, it's the right tone, it's the right vibe, it's aspirational. Go out, kick some ass today. And it's all about one thing. LG could have done that with the headphone jack. LG could have done that with the drop durability. LG could have done that with the second.
But why do that? But why do that when they're basically just copying Apple? So let's go to Apple.
I mean, not to make exactly the same commercial, but again, to do
it's that kind of paradigm
on one thing. That's what I mean, though, is no focus. There's no brand identity. You don't know what an LG phone is. Like if you look at a G series versus a V series, it's totally different than looking at a Note or looking at a Galaxy S.
And to be honest, I still don't.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the only phone, you're right. The only phone I understand is the V, and that I understand it is a productivity, multimedia, content creating monster. And that's what I understand about it. And so it's a phone that makes perfect sense for me.
Man, bless you, Ed Modlin. He's subscribed to the LG Mobile Global YouTube page. By the way, Mobile Global, very nice in
LG
running
Mobile
the time.
Global.
Yep.
Like
and
blog.
blog. Anyways, and they put out an official product video for the LG K10, and its sub headline is "Don't be sorry."
Don't be sorry, as in don't be sorry you bought this phone.
Good job. Good job. That'll get them.
So I mean, like, I don't know. For a company that I've come to enjoy two of their phones as much as I have, actually three: the G4, the V10, the V20. The G3 was like my sort of gateway. Like I liked that phone a lot. I didn't love it. The G4, I loved. The V10, I loved. The V20, I love. I just do not understand the people, the decisions that are being made and how they're marketing those products. But that's enough hammering on LG, because again, the whole point of that story was also for me to get across that I don't think it was fair that they're just blaming the G5 when the whole company seems to be having some issues with their brand identity. Next up,
even though they doubled their V20 sales in the US, but that's another story.
Well, I mean, but that's not as exciting as saying, "Oh, there's still more Notes out there than V20s." Well, not anymore, probably. I'm gonna mute myself for just a second. If you can start off on what's going on with T-Mobile making fun of AT&T here.
Yeah. Apparently, there's a whole bunch of things going on in terms of T-Mobile trying to chew up AT&T for its DirecTV Now mess, and we have seen server issues and just a whole bunch of just stuff flying on the walls, and that's been insane. So what is
stuff flying on the walls?
walls? It's a total disaster and complete mess, as T-Mobile would like to put that down. So T-Mobile's fighting back. It originally decided to subsidize DirecTV Now subscription for those coming over from AT&T. Well, now it's deciding to replace DirecTV Now with a free year of Hulu. It's already been partnering with Hulu for some promotion, so this is just another furthering of the Hulu partnership. But it's DirecTV Now. It's been called sluggish, times broken, over the top, not ready for prime time, and yeah. So at least with Hulu, it has limited commercials. It actually works. Blah blah blah. $400. You say. I mean, you save 400 or no. Wait, you save 300 something dollars between Hulu and DirecTV Now. So, I mean,
but then where did they get this giant 420? Get it?
Yeah.
Get it? 420?
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
Get it?
They must be smoking something to impair their math skills at T-Mobile, apparently. Or maybe we're just taking an old picture here. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, because they're trying to bring up like DirecTV Now subscriptions. Okay, so I don't know, man. Do you really think that if you were looking at bundles and packaging, oh god, I mean, so few people that I know that any of those words would even be attractive anymore. But you were looking at AT&T and DirecTV and looking at like the unlimited plans on AT&T when you have a DirecTV subscription, and you wanted to have that DirecTV web things, that Hulu would be the killer app to make you stray. I mean, I know it's a cool benefit for T-Mobile subscribers. I'm not saying that that's not a cool perk, but it's not the same as a full-fledged...
It's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
It's not live TV. Hulu, as much original content as you can do. The big events are still live. People watch live events, and as much it's the thing that you're more likely to talk about than Game of Thrones. I didn't catch that last night. I'm gonna have to catch it tomorrow. Whereas something big and something
Well, and I'm totally guilty of now I don't watch, like, I'm just about to finish Westworld. Not because I didn't enjoy the show, but because this notion of waiting week to week now makes me anxious and frustrated and upset. Like, so I wait until the show's done, and then I watch it all in one straight shot, because I can't even handle, any weekly timetable. And why Netflix has been so, I'm going through Travelers like crazy on Netflix. Like, it's not even the best show, but it's well done.
It's a show
and it's interesting, and I don't have to wait to know when the conclusion of a storyline is going to be wrapped up. That, this is already, it's all good. I can watch it all as I want.
Yeah, you can digest it the way that you want to. So again,
your point on live sporting events, like, during the World Cup, I was streaming like crazy from my phone to keep up with different matches. And that was only through the grace of having, at the time we had a slightly expanded cable package, so I could do ESPN. That kind of stuff I think is a bigger deal, and it's something that T-Mobile still can't. I mean, like, you still have to have a cable plan. You can use your T-Mobile data, your unlimited data for that, but if you don't have, if you just have Hulu, well, that's not really going to help you catch, World Cup play or Olympics or anything like that.
No. So there you go. I mean, AT&T is dealing with that kind of struggle. It's also dealing with just a whole bunch of struggles in terms of losing customers. I mean, we've been seeing these numbers go down and down, and we saw a study that was like, it's been pretty bad for them, and they've been slipping in terms of postpaid subscribers, and hope at the end of this tunnel of Trump, because President Donald Trump. He's now president. Hello. He's been, all up in this thing about less regulation, less
Yeah.
taxes. Is that something that rings familiar to all of y'all? I mean, we've been talking about Apple. Trump's been wanting to get Apple into the U.S. to build a freaking phone, and that's going to apparently cost us at least $100, $200 more per iPhone. So we're happy for that. And now, um, so Randall Stevenson, who's a CEO of AT&T, says that it's more likely that with Republican Commissioner Ajit Pai heading the FCC, that's Trump's pick to head the FCC, we'll be able to see the $85 billion acquisition of Time Warner pass through, and we'll be able to see AT&T basically just mowing the lawn and raking in all that grass. And they know that they're struggling right now, but they're looking towards the future.
Yeah.
That's basically it in terms of business. Okay, I mean they're sort of really banking things on the future in terms of this, but they lost.
Yeah, we see a 5.3% dip fiscal year ending 2016 over 2015, which when we're talking about $1 billion industry is not insignificant. But I think you're totally on point. I think what we're going to see is this sort of lobster potting effect from if we're just talking about tech, the sciences, NASA exploration, there are going to be so many outrageous stories that I don't really feel we're going to be able to stay vigilant for all of them. And unfortunately, it really does seem like the way that the FCC is about to get hammered means that we're going to be in for some for some difficult times for some of these things that we've been. I shouldn't say we. If you agree with me, great. But some of the things that I've been very passionate about, things like net neutrality and community broadband. That's another thing. Google and Netflix, story kind of outside our normal beat. Recently, talking about what efforts that they're trying to employ. I can't remember in what state. I want to say Alabama. I think that's wrong. But to try and strike down one of these no consumer community funded broadband initiatives where the existing ISPs and cable companies have basically mandated that as long as a neighborhood has a 10 megabit download, that's high speed internet for us. So you're not allowed to make your own community broadband, which is completely ridiculous if we're looking at how some of these communities are being completely left behind by this style of politics. You can't expect schools to be well staffed or businesses to be well connected on 10 megabit data. That's ridiculous. So I think we're going to be in for some rough years for supporting some of these initiatives. I'll be really curious to see how some of these other plans go down because AT&T has been a company that's been very litigious as it regards different types of competition, fiber initiatives, and community broadband initiatives. So their acquisition of a media company, getting content for the pipes that they serve, I will be very curious to see how that goes down. If anyone's curious, there was a clip floating around of one of the Senate hearings where Al Franken was digging into an AT&T rep executive pretty hard about what this merger might mean for consumers and basically putting them on the spot. Well, can you prove that this will be better for consumers? And you're like, no, it's like one, that's kind of the wrong question to ask, but two, it's Al Franken, so he did it in a very entertaining way.
Well,
So
of course.
yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. But AT&T is a company, because I'm on AT&T, they are absolutely the company that I think needs to be scrambling and fighting the hardest because they're still getting crushed from both sides. Prepaid, T-Mobile, and then also Verizon still leading in terms of overall subscription. And especially, I'm always surprised that Verizon still seems to do well in retention. They have a lot of churn, but they still they do better than I think they ever should in keeping their customers. So that means AT&T is sort of bleeding from both ends. which sounds a lot dirtier than I meant it
Well,
to now that I've said it out
well, I mean, they're bleeding from their wherever. That's all.
loud. Well, from
But
both of their whatevers, apparently.
from both their whatevers. But you know how Verizon is able to keep its customers around.
How?
You should how please. Always, I always need a prompt. You always need to give me the bone, because yeah,
I'm passing the baton. So tell me, Jules,
yeah.
how does Verizon keep their customers around?
As a person who was born in the year of the dog, that would be more appropriate as a metaphor. Anyways, so we're talking about Verizon and its new unlimited together plan, or its add-on package, which is international calling for $15 a month. Now, this is 70 countries for free calling in terms of landlines, but only 40 countries for mobile phones. And that
Hmm.
are included. And there's also discounted rates on over 160 countries. And that's all together $15 a month minus the discounted rates that you'll be paying in those 160 countries.
All
Now,
right.
I'm presuming that there are, in these, major, subset countries, like they're pretty prominent countries or pretty high traffic countries from the US. So we weren't able to see which countries there were because at press time they didn't publicize or didn't put out a list for those countries.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're comparing them to existing options for uh, the Verizon right now in terms of international calling. Many plans include free calling to Canada and Mexico. Typical rates start at 20 cents a minute and they go on up to like 49 or just more. Perhaps there might be like a few dollar rate
Mm-hmm.
countries out there. There's an international value plan add-on at $5 a month. It's free, I think, or and wait, well, yeah. So calling Canada, Mexico are free, and starting rates for other countries are 5 cents a minute. And then the world's share plan gives users 1,000 minutes to 230
You gotta be kidding
countries.
me that we're going back to counting minutes on BS like this.
Oh, we're not going back to minutes. It's always been counting minutes for the world share plan. 1,000 minutes to those countries for $20 a month. So
Now, I mean,
yeah.
doesn't this okay, so first of all, cool, I guess, that Verizon is trying to address a hole in their current offerings in how they deal with international calling. But doesn't it always seem that when Verizon does something like this, it's way more complicated than it needs to be? I like I pay money to Google, and then I have a very simple chart that tells me how much international calls cost per minute on Google Voice. Like, that's easy. If I want to do business with T-Mobile, there's really easy. I mean, like, I just call internationally on T-Mobile. Like they don't have to look at different plans for what I think my usage might be. Either charged 20 cents a minute or $5 additional a month for 5 cents a minute or 1,000 minutes for countries for $20 like what are we why how who does business that way anymore when it comes
Oh.
to international calling? That
So
is
apparently, okay,
ridiculous.
yeah, that is ridiculous. But apparently, unlimited together package is apparently replacing both of those other standard pay per minute and then unlimited together for the world and for North America. So at least there's that. I mean, I guess it
That's a
cleans up.
little bit better, I guess.
It's better, less confusion, but they should have probably timed their press release to when they were going to make the change. How about that? Give us a bone, Verizon.
Right. I mean, we can only do so much in deciphering what kind of information you're trying to give us. No, but I mean, like, even on top of that, after a point, like if you're an international traveler and you've got a Verizon phone, which is CDMA in the United States and GSM everywhere else, like after a point, can't you just say like, hey, you travel a lot this month, you pay us $10 extra, and you can have relationships in every other country, like T-Mobile does. This is what I don't get. I mean, it's not like Verizon doesn't have the ability to go out and strike up agreements with other countries to provide services in those other countries. Like this notion that it's somehow super hard to call internationally when then I just fire up a computer and launch Skype. Like I think we've all figured out that this really isn't as difficult as these companies are trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, but you know what? It doesn't make them money.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But I mean, like, if you just made it easy and then you just did it, then you could charge money for that and people would pay it and you wouldn't have to mess with all of these other shenanigans. I don't know.
Knees.
All right, let me blitz through a few more of these tweets, and then we have a viewer mail, and then we can wrap this show up. Going back to our DirecTV story, this is from Jay Young at Reburn Mobile. I was actually interested in DirecTV now. My cable bill is insane, and I was going to switch. I already have Hulu using that PN Weekly hashtag. Again, I mean, I know that the current implementation of DirecTV is leaving a lot to be desired, but maybe if you can hold out for a little while, see if they can fix some of these issues, get their streaming game in play. The DirecTV Now service doesn't look like it would be terrible.
It's still good on paper.
If you have good data and they can fix their server side nonsense, then I think it could be something that eventually would be a good cord cutting solution.
No, just go back to DMB. Just go back to DMB. It's just going to be that easy.
We were talking about business decisions and Trump towards the end there, and Panzer Z sent us a little Monopoly Party GIF, and I think he's making a play on the word monopoly, that we're going to be looking at companies creating monopolies in certain locations to prevent any competition. Not to, again, get overly political, but this is why I have a small problem with people who start talking about like the free market and deregulation, because there's no incentive for these companies to compete. There's only incentive for these companies to provide value to their shareholders. So if they have to, compete more, then that's going to cost them more. And instead, we're going to end up like in here in areas in California where you don't have any choices for any of your services. And we're a major metropolitan area, let alone rural areas of the United States.
What else? Let's see.
I had one other.
Lots of complaints about Verizon. Although I've been with Verizon for 12 years, says, Reburn Mobile. Yeah, Jay Young. And there's also, and he gets a huge discount from his employer. Timo Netherlands, says Rina Chan, is €35 unlimited all in Europe and €60 unlimited all in Europe and North America. No counting minutes or megabytes. I mean, it really depends on the territory in terms of what they, the spectrum of what they offer. Because lots of, like here in Hong Kong, back when I was traveling, when the whole family was traveling to China, their service didn't work in China. Like you would expect, it's you would be able to at least go into China. Lots of people do business in China or have family or whatnot, and apparently, it's kind of hard to, you have to. It's like stupid to have to ask for that in terms of getting it on your plan. So I don't know.
And then also,
really depends on that.
I really feel, again, this is why, even though I was I enjoyed the conversation that he brought to the table, but I was probably never going to be a Gary Johnson supporter. I really feel that the reason why we see some of those plans throughout Europe, where they seem to be priced more competitively against what we might be able to get here in the United States, definitely more competitive than what you can get in Canada, I think is because of regulation actually improving the quality of real competition. And I think here in the United States, our deregulated market, to the degree that it's been deregulated, provides the appearance of competition, but it doesn't actually force these companies to compete directly against each other. For example, not being able to take a Verizon phone, like back when we were on 3G, mostly CDMA versus GSM, you couldn't take a Sprint phone over to T-Mobile, or you couldn't take a Verizon phone over to AT&T. That's not really competition. You have two technologies which provide the same solution, but they're different and proprietary and create walled gardens. That's not actually consumer-friendly competition. Whereas in Europe, they didn't have that problem. So you could just, I don't want to do business with you anymore. And I, as a consumer, am going to choose to spend my money somewhere else and just put a new SIM card in my phone. That's real
what the heck
competition.
Is this?
That's
what the heck is this? I'm asking you. All right. So I'm on the three Hong Kong page here. And then there's bonus. You get bonus data for porting in. You don't get bill discount. You get an extra gigabyte of data. You get minutes. Then you get heart to heart, whatever the hell that is. And then you get unlimited Wi-Fi.
They're so magnanimous.
Wow. Super data pack, contract based monthly fee. Oh my god. Okay.
I might have to do some cranky rants on the old Some Gadget Guy YouTube channel about politics.
But
not to vomit all of this all over our Pocketnow community.
There is one piece of listener mail that we can talk about.
I do want to get to that. Absolutely. Let me pull it up. So this comes from
basically. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say this comes from podcast@pocketnow.com, and then I was going to hand it over to you, Jules, if you wanted to read through it. I could do that too, though.
I was just going to give a little synopsis about how it's about embargoed information, how we handle it, how most outlets handle embargoed information, how we're supposed to act like under the guise of not knowing, even though we know. And I'll give my personal thoughts about that. Yeah,
so this is from Peter Hayton using the podcast@Pocketnow email address. Hey, Pocketnow team. With new devices such as the HTC U launching in recent weeks, where you've all been kept under embargo for a time, I've begun to wonder what your thoughts are about having embargoed information and needing to keep it hushed up until such time when it becomes publicly available. I remember Jaime on the Daily last year covering HTC 10 rumors when he already had the phone. I understand why companies do this. I just wanted to know your opinions on it. Thanks and keep up the great work. P.S. I've really enjoyed Juan's real camera reviews over the past year and look forward to more great content. Peter, thanks, buddy. So actually, I did want to lead off with you, Jules, just because you're the actual journalist on the team. Like, you went to school
quote unquote
about this stuff.
Quote unquote.
So what are your thoughts? There's a delicate dance that we have to play between providing our listeners and viewers with information and then also, making sure that we're not stepping on any PR toes.
Yeah, so I really haven't taken a look at this issue on like a stepping, like a ethics and values view. So I'm just going to tell you how I tend to handle these things, and that is if I get a bunch of embargoed information, and I'm assigned to do a post or two about a device or feature or whatnot, I usually look at the embargo time and do not anything. I don't touch any of it until maybe the night before if I have to, or up to a couple hours before, and I start working with the material then. And that is, just to prevent me from, having all that information on my mind, so that it's not plausible deniability to say, but it's just.
Well, but I mean, it kind of is in a way. I mean, like, even just for your own sanity, keeping some of that stuff straight, so you don't feel like you're lying to someone in withholding information that you might have been privy to. I totally understand that.
And the embargo is under embargo, and then that embargo is under embargo. So you don't really know what you can. If you're able to tell, I just noticed something on the three site. I'm sorry, that's making me laugh a little bit.
Are you still looking at plans and rates? We have a legitimate viewer question to answer.
Well, when you're talking about how they characterize the nighttime unlimited data contract, apparently,
God,
which is called night fever.
Oh no, they didn't.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
God,
they
I mean,
did.
that's like going back to like when we were all switching from 2G to 3G and
Unlimited data, maximum download speed is 7.2
Palm
megabits per second.
Treos and stuff. That's terrible.
Lovely. So yeah, in terms of working with all, and just, that, I mean, companies do it. I'm not sure in terms of what are, I mean, I think it's acceptable practice in terms of on the media outlet side, because we're not actually trading any integrity or cash even. There's a whole bunch of controversy now about paycheck journalism, even though it's been a long-standing issue. It's now that's we're paying more scrutiny to it, and what the cases are for using it. I mean, we're limited in capacity anyway to provide information, or provide companies extraordinary demands anyways.
Right.
So we're good in terms of Pocketnow being limited in that aspect, and also we're still given our editorial freedoms. So it's the most important part of having to deal with all this. And as long as we can comfortably operate around the facts of the matter, because we do deal in a lot of speculatory information, and
Right. Well,
whatever
and like Pocketnow lineage does come from guys like Evan Blass, who
exactly.
built reps on leaking information.
But we're built to disseminate all that stuff and not contribute, even though we are guilty of that sometimes. But we're building as much information upon what we've already covered.
I also think we have a certain amount of safety and leeway in the fact that we're talking about consumer electronics. We're not talking about like medicine. We're not talking about an embargo on drug trial, which is going to come out and show that a weight loss drug causes cancer, and we have to abide by that NDA. We're talking about shiny glowing rectangles that are fun. It's a little less precious. So
as far as we know, we haven't been given any embargoes about the Galaxy Note 7 exploding. Like what the freaking government's going to do or something. Yeah. So yeah.
Oof. So yes. My feelings on in sort of to try and address your scenario there, Peter, especially when we're talking about Jaime had the HTC 10 and he was still trying to cover rumors on the HTC 10. I personally, coming from Hollywood, am very conservative about how information is sent out. I really don't enjoy leaks. I really don't enjoy anymore. Like, we're talking about movies. I don't enjoy trailers because I feel trailers give up too much of the movie that I'm about to spend an exorbitant amount of money on to go see in a theater. So I get really upset like when a new movie's out and I stumble my way into a bunch of spoilers, for example. When we were producing the movie review podcast, I was super conservative, even talking about old films, because I didn't want to betray the movie to make my podcast better. So when I see people who are doing reviews that are basically just like hammering movies and giving up every plot point in the movie, and they kind of have like a throwaway, oh yeah, here's the spoilers era section of our review, I don't feel that is appropriately commentary and critique. If they're using clips of the film especially, but even if they're not, if you're betraying a movie to better your own commentary, then that's not actually commentary. You're actually usurping the content someone else produced to make your own. And so taking this back to phones, I like the pomp and circumstance surrounding a really good phone launch. I like the press conference where they get a little creative in how they're going to talk about the phone. I like seeing the president walk out on stage and hold the phone up in his hand and seeing the press kind of go crazy and cameras going off. And I think we've lost something in that anticipation. It's why modern horror movies suck, is that there's no buildup. They're giving away all their good jump scares before you really get to see the protagonist fight the monster. And I kind of feel like the current system that we have for leaks and things like that, we've like what we just did on the Galaxy S8. What mysteries are we really going to discover when Samsung finally announces this phone? We will have reviewed it and nitpicked it and commented on it beyond anyone's capacity for discussing a single piece of consumer electronics before it's even real and in our hands. And that takes some of the fun out of being a gadget reviewer for me. And I think just being a fan of technology, it takes a lot of the fun out of just watching other people's commentary on these things, that like they've already made up their minds about the device before it's even officially announced, let alone released, and far from when it's actually in their hands. So I find that to be a fairly disappointing aspect of where commentary has kind of drifted in this age of consumer electronics. And so when someone says that they've got an embargo, I work very hard to make sure that we don't give up the information that they say is important. For example, we accidentally sort of kind of stepped on Huawei's toes with the Honor 6X. So we had the Honor 6X under embargo, and there was one piece of information that, just through a miscommunication on my part, wasn't transmitted to the editorial team while we were out at CES. And someone else broke the story of what the Honor 6X was going to cost. And so it wasn't Pocketnow who broke that story, but Pocketnow picked up on the story, and they also sort of wrote up a little news piece on it. So, like that kind of situation just got a little gray and murky as to whether or not this one piece of an embargo was actually broken. And so that's really inside baseball. But, it was something to think, like our editorial team worked very hard to make sure that we were playing within the rules, because then also once that embargo lifted, we wanted people to focus on the video that we had created, that we had gotten to spend a couple days playing with the phone before the announcement. And we wanted to share what that experience was like. That commentary is so much more important than like, here's a blurry cam shot of a phone that's about to be released, and here's a spec sheet, and here's
oh my god, $199. Oh
yeah. I kind of feel like it.
I mean, just because the information is out there, and the information was out there, and it was public, and if we didn't cover it well, then I don't think we were we're doing our jobs, even though it's kind of a questionable thing to do, a questionable thing in terms of just the whole industry being based on this kind of constant drip of information. But we report it, and you evaluate, or we all together evaluate what this means, and whether or not it's good or bad for the consumer, or Huawei, or whatever. But in terms of relating that to our in-depth editorial coverage, I don't think there should be a connection, especially given that when you're trying to patch up a leak, you're trying to you don't blame the media for doing so. We've talked about this
and I think that is different. I mean, like what I'm talking about is this sort of culture of like trying to spoil things. And again, I know Evan Blass is sort of Pocketnow alumni. That's not what gets me off in terms of being a fan of technology. That's not what I like. So, I mean, to liking it, again, like another metaphor, there was an MMA reporter by the name, I don't remember his name, of Ariel, who was banned from UFC commentary and UFC events because this blogger would go out there and post like what the next big matchup or next big fight was going to be, like hours before the UFC would make their proper big flashy showy announcement. And so again, all that blogger is doing is usurping the UFC spotlight by a matter of hours so that they can get their page traffic, they can get their blog traffic, ad clicks, whatever it is kids do these days, those wacky millennials. So what did you get out of that? So if you were following that blogger and you were like, oh yeah, I totally know who this next fight's going to be, like 2 hours before the UFC announces it, and that's information that I really care about. So you got some crappy blog version of what the UFC was going to put out there as a spectacle to get you hyped up. And so you just spent that time picking like, oh, I don't think you should be fighting Anderson Silva because he's not at the top of his game after that injury. And I think, so all you're doing is just BSing your way through what that announcement would have been, as opposed to like, this is something that was supposed to be impressive. And, a company like a tech company has, I think, every right to try and put their products on display the way that they think is going to excite their fan base. And just like other outlets like movies try and do with trailers, that I think most trailers now are terrible at spoiling the actual content of the movie. And then other industries too, like fights, like the fight industry, the MMA industry. They want to craft a narrative, and leaking that or usurping that takes away from what the excitement or the spectacle could have been had that company been allowed to do their job the way that they saw that they wanted.
If it's just 100-word post about, okay, this is the matchup, and it's just following talking points on the memo, well, you're not really. I mean, it's nice to have that. It's nice to get that, that gin, but you don't get the tonic as well. You don't get the analytical side of things, and and it doesn't really, the company, whether or not it decides to be introspective and look at, all right, so this information has gone out. Should we change course? Like, if there's not even that kind of consideration, like information, and the publication of that should be able to influence decisions. Now, even if the UFC didn't decide to, change, like, you shouldn't really be punishing an outlet for doing that kind of thing. You should be definitely checking.
But I understand
what's going on in your company.
Because again, this was a blogger who made their entire career out of basically beating the UFC to its own punch, pun intended, and not for any purpose or design other than just to be first. Like, again, if you're gonna upset a company's ability to showcase and promote their products the way that they see fit, I totally understand why they would say, okay, you can't come to our events anymore. I get it. I totally understand why a company would do that. And again, it's all about fostering relationships. And that's another thing too, is, we're trying to play by rules within the context of being a reputable outlet in disseminating information to our viewers, and then also making sure that companies are able to craft the narrative that they want to craft, because that becomes a major part of how I review a phone. Is a company's going to make a claim. When LG makes a claim, life is better with friends. That's a claim that we need to investigate for our audience. And I think it's easier when they get to put on their spectacle, and then we can look at the product and say, like, well, is it though? Is it better?
I think we should be alone.
I don't know.
I think we should be alone. Yeah. No, it's just, it's always nice to.
I'm so alone. I'm so alone.
Well, I mean, you have the spin doctors, and then you have the, we're the DJs, I guess, and we're trying to spin things the other way. And, it's always important to as well.
Context
I don't know.
Is always important. Actually, you know what, Jules? I think we can end the show on that sentiment right there. Context is king.
Or queen.
Or
king
queen.
Of queens.
Some type of emperor-like position of authority over the rest of us.
That's what I'd like to believe.
There we go. There you have it, folks. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. The show is over. But the conversation continues on Twitter, where you can find Jules as @PointJules, and I'm humbly @SomeGadgetGuy. Give us a follow. We're always down to chat. Pocketnow is around the web on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and our home site, pocketnow.com. And shows like this could not exist without your support. By sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology, and by dropping reviews on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever podcast reviews can be left. Once again, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Blue Apron, in keeping my family fed. Definitely check out the promo link, blueapron.com/pocketnow. Get yourself 3 free meals for signing up. We're super excited to have them on as a sponsor. They're helping us keep the lights on, but ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness, so make sure you tune back in.
Bye.